Quilty is brought to you by APQS, handcrafted quilting machines. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Hovel, when you need to cut it close, choose Hovels. Quiltology, the urban quilt space.
Quilty.
Today on Quilty, actually, hey, bring that little... Hey, hi Matt, hi Nola. How you doing? No. We're going to talk about how fabric is sold at a quilt shop, and Nola and Matt and Constance are going to help me out. Join us. Today we're going to talk about buying fabric at the quilt shop. It can be a little overwhelming, and you were telling me that you went to a quilt shop, or you went to a fabric store not long ago.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that experience.
We did. Well, we were very excited. We had this idea of a project to get started doing something we've never done, which is doing something like make a quilt. And we went to the fabric store and with the idea of let's go pick something we like. And we spent...
It devolved very quickly.
It did. How long did we end up being there?
Probably like 45
minutes. And we went from aisle to aisle with Nola in the stroller, which of course shortened the amount of time and patience for that. And there were beautiful fabrics, and we kept picking them up and putting them back because we realized we liked several things and we weren't able to make a decision.
It's just really overwhelming.
Really overwhelming, absolutely. Many newer quilters or wannabe quilters or potential quilters say the same thing. I think the first thing to point out about where you were is that you were at a fabric shop, but they probably had at this fabric shop that you were in home deck fabrics and other fabrics. Okay,
yes.
They did.
I think the first thing to think about when you go and when you want to make a quilt is to find a quilt shop, a dedicated quilt shop. A lot of quilt shops will sell some other home deck fabrics, some heavier weight things that you might upholstery with. They might have some of those things, but for the most part, a quilt shop is going to carry fabric that you would make a quilt with. If you tried to make a quilt out of home deck fabric, it would be very difficult. You'd be very sad because it'd be heavy and yucky, and it's not the best. So for more information about fabric, the kind of fabric you want to use in a quilt, watch Fabric 101. That's a great episode of Quilty where we talk about that. But so you picked out a fabric bolt earlier.
Yes,
Why don't you grab that? Because I want to show you first how fabric is sold at the quilt shop. That's the first thing we're going to really talk about. And fabric comes to quilt shops on bolts, and that is this cardboard, piece. It's just a piece of cardboard. And at the factory, when they print this cotton broadcloth, they wrap it onto these bolts. And in the olden days, they used to just come into a quilt shop and you'd buy fabric right off the bolt, and that was just the way you did it. You probably wouldn't buy the whole bolt. You'd probably buy sections of it. And that's how you would do it. And in fact, you still buy fabric that way today.
And how do I know how much is on here?
Well, a full bolt of fabric is going to be about 12 or 15 yards. It depends. But usually you'll buy smaller sections than that. But there's also, over the years, there's also different ways fabric is sold today. And some of those ways, well, this is a good example of a nice, happy basket of fat quarters.
Can I go through them?
You can. Touch them, pull them out, look at them. They are so fun to shop. Beautiful fabric.
This is much easier to get my hands on than a whole bolt.
It is. And fat quarters are cuts of fabric that have been cut rather than 9 by 44, which is like a straight cut off the bolt, and it is a 1/4 yard, but it's kind of a long, skinny piece. These are 1/4 yards of fabric that have been cut square. It's 18 by 22. It's much more useful for a quilter to have a sort of a square piece to work with than a really long, skinny piece. Okay?
And when I'm looking through these, so many of them seem to go together.
Yes, exactly.
That was something I think when we were looking at fabrics, and particularly with quilts, we know we're going to use multiple fabrics, and that's another piece of overwhelming. I can finally pick some I like, but they may not match. How do I get help with that?
Constance, you're a natural. For example, quilt shops put these together. They don't come from the factory this way. Okay. Quilt shops always get those bolts of fabric, and then they cut these fat quarters and make them really shoppable. And just like you said, it's like, I don't know what to put with what. Quilt shops will put fat quarter bundles together, so when you get this, that looks great, and you can take it home and start cutting and making your project.
And somebody at that store, so this will be different. I mean,
yes.
Every store you go to.
And would they also help you put together a bundle out of a basket if you weren't quite sure what went together?
That's a good idea.
They absolutely would. So fat quarters are a great way to shop fabrics. It's a great way to build your stash.
Nice.
Fabrics We love to buy fabric. Quilters love to buy fabric, and you will buy it even when you don't know what to do with it. You will keep buying it. Another quick word about how fabric is sold. I can take that from you. There are new ways that quilt shops are developing to sell fabric in a way that is easier, that makes it a little more fun. Maybe it takes some of the guesswork out of things. They'll, wrap things up in a roll. That's sort of fun to buy. It feels good in your hand. You don't have to wait for it to be cut. These are they're sometimes called layer cakes or jelly rolls or charm packs. I mean, they really make it like candy.
That's really
right?
adorable.
Yeah.
And it really does help. I mean, it's a good marketing thing, but it's also very helpful because when you want to make a quilt, you want to get going.
And they've matched things.
They've matched things, exactly. They've done a lot of that. This is another example of a fat quarter, just, a little bit differently, folded a little bit differently. Sometimes they make little tri-folds. They're all really a lot of fun. Okay, so that is kind of how fabric is sold at the quilt shop. There's a little bit more I want to say about it, but the one thing that's very important, I forgot about that, the little remnant. Sorry, sometimes you see little scraps. Scraps are a great way to build your stash. You can get a remnant. It's not even a fat quarter. It's just like a scrap, and they can be very cheap and fun and really cool. So to know how much fabric you need, it's like, well, I have all these great fabric, and I know, the colors or something, but you need to know how much do I buy for this particular project, right? If you have a project in mind. So you will always be told, unless you're creating something out of thin air, if you are working from a pattern, you will be told how much fabric you need. For example, in this book, which is a great little seasonal quilt book, I've turned it to this page, Little Red Schoolhouse. Adorable little quilt, classic pattern.
I've seen that before.
Yes, this is a very, very old, like 19th century pattern, the Little Red Schoolhouse or Little Schoolhouse pattern. In any quilt book or magazine or pattern, the first thing they're going to tell you is how much fabric you need. And it tells you need 1.5 yards of tan and red print. You need 4 1/4 yards of red. It's going to tell you exactly. So when you go into a quilt shop, you can say, well, Ms. Quilt Shop owner, I need 1.5 yards of this tan and red. So you have the guide. So you have in your pattern how much fabric you need. But I want to show you all something, you two in particular. This is a kit.
Oh, wow.
This is a baby quilt kit. It is called Gumdrops. It was designed by the folks here at Quiltology. Inside a kit, and this retails for $40. A kit gives you your pattern so you know how to sew it together. But it also gives you the fabric, and it's already cut.
Oh, wow.
So you get to just start. Here's your pattern, and that shows you how to sew things.
It's that you need to do this?
Everything that you need to do this.
That's great.
It is.
I feel like we would feel really successful using something like that, and then that would prompt us to do another.
It's true.
Because I think without something like that, we might give up. I think that would keep us on track.
I think that's an honest response. We would.
It's very honest and true, and I think a lot of people starting with a kit is a great idea. Thank you both so much, Matt and Constance, for being here. For more information on Quilty and to watch more episodes about how to put that quilt together, keep watching. We're here every week, and thanks a lot. Quilty is brought to you by APQS, handcrafted quilting machines. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Hovel, when you need to cut it close, choose Hovels. Quiltology, the urban quilt space.
Quilty.